What do you say to those critics that say this is politically motivated?
I can't control when that documentary comes out. I can't control the fact that it's premiering 2 weeks before the election.
And she says she could not stay silent any longer.
It takes a lot of guts, and you have to really prepare yourself to be ready for that onslaught. And I'm ready now. Just bring it.
And despite her saying that the timing so close to the election and choosing to speak out is coincidental, in our interview, she does make her support for Harris very clear, in addition to not wanting to see Trump retake the.
That is so scary, and that is so sad, and shame on you, the Republican Party, and Donald Trump.
Because this is what's going to drive it every election cycle.
Well, yeah, that's why women get fired up and continue to vote on these issues and try to drive you all out of office.
In 2016, the women voted for Donald Trump, and in 2024, they'll do the same thing.
And that's very sad that they are internalizing this misogyny, and I actually hope that they get freed themselves so that they can see the predator for who he is.
All right, guys.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the latest MeToo allegations against former President Trump because, of course, they would come out with new MeToo allegations 2 weeks before the election because Trump is winning, okay? So they're trying to do whatever they can in order to stop Trump from winning. Now, I don't know if these allegations are true. I'm just saying that the timing of these new allegations is pretty suspicious. And the mainstream liberal media doesn't seem to think that the timing is suspicious because they are pushing this story as if it is 100% true. Although, again, these are just allegations. 30-year-old allegations from Stacey Williams, who happens to be a Kamala Harris supporting Democrat activist that used to work for Barack Obama. And before she worked for Barack Obama, she was a model, okay, back in the day. And at the time, 1993 to be exact, she alleges that Trump touched her inappropriately, okay, in a sexual way, when she was hanging out with him and Jeffrey Epstein. And again, this story is more than 30 years old. Don't know why she decided to come out with this story now. Again, 2 weeks before the election. She just so happens to be supporting Kamala Harris and Barack Obama. But according to her, this has nothing to do with the election at all. It's not political, and I want to talk about it. But before we get into it, we have to have a word from the sponsor of this video, Noble Gold. Are you worried about the future of the U.S. economy? With so much uncertainty in the air, it is natural to fret about the security of your retirement savings. However, there's one asset that stands the test of time, and that is gold. For centuries, gold has been a hedge against market volatility and economic instability. With a gold IRA from Noble Gold Investments, you can harness the power of precious metals in order to secure your financial future. By rolling over your existing IRA or 401k into a self-directed gold IRA, you can enjoy the potential for long-term growth and stability. Diversify your portfolio with a tangible asset that has real value. Setting up a gold IRA with Noble Gold Investments has never been easier with its streamlined process and expert guidance. This election year, do not let the volatility and uncertainty keep you up at night. Vote for the timeless safety of gold and silver in 2024. And Noble Gold Investments will give you up to 10 1-ounce silver Trump coins or a 10-ounce silver American flag bar if you open a qualified account. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com now. That is noblegoldinvestments.com. And just remember, there's a risk with every investment and there's no guarantee of any kind.
There's more breaking news this hour. CNN has a new interview with a former Sports Illustrated swimsuit model who alleges Donald Trump groped her in the 1990s. CNN's Sunlen Serfati spoke with Stacey Williams. Sunlen, what did she tell you about her encounter with Trump?
Well, Wolf, this is the first time that she's talking extensively about this. Stacey Williams claims that in 1993, she was out on a walk with Jeffrey Epstein, who she was dating briefly at the time. Now, they were walking down Fifth Avenue, she says, and Epstein suggested that they drop in and see Donald Trump in Trump Tower. What happened quickly next, she says, made her struggle with shame and embarrassment for the next 30 years.
The second he was in front of me, he pulled me into him, and his hands were just on me and didn't come off.
Former Sports Illustrated model Stacey Williams says that Donald Trump groped her more than 30 years ago in Trump Tower. with the later convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein watching and smiling in the room as it happened. Williams has not spoken out about the incident extensively until now, and in her first on-camera interview, she tells CNN the most detailed accounting of the incident yet, alleging that in 1993, Epstein, who she was briefly dating at the time, brought her into Trump Tower.
This context made no sense because the hands were on me, and then he and Jeffrey just kept talking and looking at each other and smiling.
After leaving Trump Tower, Williams said that Epstein berated her for allowing Trump to touch her.
I just had this really sickening feeling that it was coordinated, that somehow the whole thing was, I was rolled in there like a piece of meat for some kind of weird, twisted game.
Soon after the encounter, she severed ties with Epstein and said she was unaware of the kind of predatory behavior that would come to light in later years. She also says she received this undated postcard from Trump delivered to her modeling agency by courier shortly after the incident. Stacy, you're home away from home. Love, Donald.
I felt sick to my stomach.
Williams says she did not tell anyone about the incident for over 10 years.
I felt a wave of shame, and I just couldn't think about it, face it, talk about it for a very long time. I put it in a little box inside of me, turned the key, locked it.
CNN has spoken to 3 friends of Williams to corroborate her story, who each said that she told them about the incident with Trump and Epstein in 2006, 2015, and 16. The Trump campaign has denied Williams' allegations, calling it a fake story contrived by Kamala Harris's campaign. Williams' account only adding to the lengthy list of women who have alleged that Trump groped, kissed, or assaulted them. Trump has also denied those allegations. Williams has been engaged as a Democratic volunteer for decades and shared her story on a Zoom call on Monday at a Survivors for Kamala event, supporting the vice president's run, although the group is not affiliated with the campaign.
Late winter, early spring of '93, I was on a walk with Jeffrey from his brownstone on the Upper East Side down Fifth Avenue when Jeffrey looked at me and said, let's go stop by and see Trump. And so we went to Trump Tower and went up the elevator. I felt like that was some sort of sick bet or game between the two of them.
With the election less than 2 weeks away, Williams arguing that her decision to speak out now was not driven by the presidential campaign, but with the release this week of a documentary about Sports Illustrated, one she participated in 2 years ago, during which she briefly alluded to the incident.
What do you say to those critics that say this was politically motivated?
I can't control when that documentary comes out. I can't control the fact that it's premiering 2 weeks before the election.
And she says she could not stay silent any longer.
It takes a lot of guts, and you have to really prepare yourself to be ready for that onslaught. And I'm ready now. Just bring it.
And despite her saying that the timing so close to the election and choosing to speak out is coincidental, in our interview, she does make her support for Harris very clear, in addition to not wanting to see Trump retake the White House.
Yeah. Again, this is apparently journalism in 2024, guys, right? So you're just going to run with any old allegation, even if there are things about the allegation that really kind of don't make sense, that may be a little bit off. Like, for example, the woman claimed that this happened when they were leaving Jeffrey Epstein's brownstone, which is just a townhouse, his townhouse mansion really in New York City, that he didn't get until 1996. But she claimed this happened in 1993 before he actually bought the brownstone, right? So again, maybe she's off, okay, in regards to the house. I'm not entirely sure, okay, but I'm just saying, right? There's things about this that, raises questions, okay? And it's just funny to me because they're running with this story, okay, despite the fact that when you had people come out and rebuke the story in the Atlantic about Trump saying how he didn't want to pay $60,000 for the funeral for an effing Mexican, despite the fact that the family of the fallen servicewoman coming out and saying that that wasn't true, okay, and that this story is made up. CNN is not interested in interviewing them and getting their perspective, right, to push back against that narrative. No, they just went with that as if it was 100% true and verified. The story about Trump praising Hitler, also, you've had people come out from the Trump administration saying that that's not true as well, too, that Trump never did that. Did CNN interview any of those people and try to figure out what their side of the story is? No, they didn't, right? You have Doug Emhoff's ex. She's now speaking out about the alleged 2020 assault at the Cannes Film Festival, in which she claims that Doug Pimp Hand Emhoff smacked her so hard that she did a 360. Is CNN reaching out to her to ask about her story, right? And to get her on camera and to talk about what she went through? No, they're not. It seems as if they're only really interested in witness testimony that can be used to smear Trump. That's the only thing they're interested in, right? Anything that goes against that narrative, right? They're not interested in actually doing any journalism when it comes to that. Again, it's just funny how that works. But there was an interesting exchange on Wolf Blitzer's show in response to CNN airing this story, in which you had a Republican essentially call this out, the fact that CNN is airing this story. Despite the fact, again, these allegations were 30 years ago. These are allegations that, I think that anybody could have made, okay? We don't know if it's true or not. I mean, asking 3 friends about it and them saying, yeah, it happened, although they weren't there, they weren't actual witnesses, that to me is not really solid enough evidence for CNN, again, to run this story as if these allegations are 100% credible, okay? Yeah, I mean, you had a Republican on the show talking about this with some feminists from Kamala Harris's campaign, and let's just say the feminists did not like what the Republican had to say about this story.
He doesn't need to. I mean, listen, we're 2 weeks within the election. You get a lot of these fake things coming out. We've addressed this. You're going to have something come out in the next couple of days, I suspect, and then something come out next week. This is a long playbook that the Democratic Party has done, and they try to come up somebody at the last minute to try to distract from the fact that they have yet to make their case of why Kamala Harris should actually be president. So no, we're not going to address it. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about the issues that matter to the American people, which is immigration and the economy.
Alencia, what do you see as the impact of this latest allegation against Trump?
Well, I think it continues to remind the coalition that we are building of what Vice President Harris is for and who Donald Trump is. As Stacey was so brave enough to share her story and the nuances that are there for survivors, it really it crystallizes this question that I had in the last segment of, how are you okay with a man who actually has been found liable for all of this? If there are lists and numbers of women that continue to come out and talk about how they have been assaulted by this man, how are you going to actually justify voting for someone like that? She mentioned being part of this coalition of survivors for Harris. It's a coalition of over 200 women that signed an ad that went into the New York Times with organizations like the National Women's Law Center and Care in Action. And these are women who have said enough is enough. And I think this also gives permission to independent and Republican women that are actually tired of this dangerous culture that Donald Trump has ushered in to our American population.
I mean, let's talk about the dangerous culture. The dangerous culture is anytime we get close to the election, the Democratic Party is going to find an activist, the super activists we found out, to come out with an allegation.
You're just missing her experience.
We saw it take place during the confirmation hearings of Supreme Court justices now for 30 years. We're now seeing it sort of bleed into politics. Like this is a dangerous thread that somebody with no evidence, no nuance, sorry you say nuance, there's no nuance, there's no date, there's nothing related to this that comes out and make this allegation. And CNN, which is a major news organization for over 40 years, decides to talk about this. It just seems silly to me.
But Trump has a history of these kinds of allegations against him. Last year he was found liable for sexual abuse.
Yeah, but we also know that there's a history of women making these things up. We saw this in 2016, that a a lot of women came forward and none of the evidence came forward after that.
How dare you?
So we've seen a tremendous amount of evidence over the years of women coming forward and not saying the truth with respect to Donald Trump on these issues.
We make these stories up because that is not true. We saw it in 2016 and the
voters saw right through it, and they're going to see right through it today.
So you don't believe women, and I don't understand how you could sit up here as a man and say that you don't believe this woman's stories or the hundreds of women who continue to come out and brave enough to talk about the predatory predatory behavior that has led them into these types of situations.
2 weeks before an
unfortunately.
election, you're right.
It
I
has
don't
happened.
believe somebody
It
2
has
weeks before an
happened
election.
the
You're right.
entire time Donald Trump has been
And this
in
woman
public
came out
office.
2 weeks before an election
But
with no nuance,
But no man
dates of
in the
when this- Give
Republican
me a
Party
break.
can sit here and atone for this type of atmosphere that you all are welcoming. That is so scary, and that is so sad. And shame on
What's
you,
scary is
the
for you
Republican
letting this
Party,
in our
and Donald
politics,
Trump.
because this is what's going to drive it every election cycle. We're
Well,
gonna hear
yeah,
a
that's
fake
why women get
fake
fired up
accusation.
and continue to vote on these issues and try to drive you
And
all
they,
out of
in
office.
2016, the women voted for Donald Trump, and in 2024, they'll do the same thing.
And that's very sad that they are internalizing this misogyny. And I actually hope that they get freed themselves so that they can see,
see
the
the facts for the
predatory
truth.
for who they, the predator for who he is.
All right, guys, so stand by.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. There you have it. Okay, according to this feminist supporting the Kamala campaign, if you are a woman and you decide you want to vote for Trump, then you are internalizing misogyny, right? Internalizing misogyny. If you're a woman that supports Trump. Now, as this woman also basically admits during this exchange, these types of stories are used to fire up women, right? This type of stuff that emotional women will vote based off of, even though, in my opinion, this really doesn't have anything to do with, you know, the presidency, right? MeToo doesn't have anything to do with the presidency, right? I mean, let's be 100. But, you know, this is what they do, right? And again, you know, hey, I wasn't there, so I don't know if the allegations are true or not. I just find it to be very suspicious that this woman waited 30 years. And this woman is also a Democrat Party activist. She has a history of working for the Democrat Party. And on top of that, she's openly supporting Kamala Harris. I'm just saying, there's a whole lot of bias here, right? There's a whole lot of motivations, in my opinion, that could explain why these allegations are coming out now, okay? Because again, there's two ways you can look at this. You can say that, hey, she's just completely making this up, and she's just trying to smear Trump because she's trying to help Kamala Harris win. That's one way you can look at it. The other way you can look at it is that, well, this did happen. It happened more than 30 years ago, and she's only coming out with it now because he is running for president, or that he's about to win. Now, again, I find that to be a very interesting explanation because the guy was a famous businessman for a long time. He ran for president in 2016 and 2020, and he's doing it again in 2024. So again, I'm curious as to why did it take 30 years for this woman to come forward with these allegations? Now, the excuse that a lot of these women use is this idea that, well, it was so traumatic that it's just hard for me to talk about, and this is why it took 30 years for me to say something about it, right? This is why it took such a long time, because it's so traumatic. Now, I don't know. I mean, she wouldn't be the first person to accuse Trump of something like this that happened a long time ago. And you would think that if you already have a precedent that has been set where you've already had women come out and to say this type of stuff, you would think it would make it easier for others to come out. That's typically how it goes, right? When one person comes out, typically a whole bunch of them start coming out at the same time because they feel more comfortable, okay, according to them. But that's not necessarily what's happening in the case of this woman, right? This woman, again, is doing this right before the election. And, you know, I think that a lot of people are rightfully skeptical, right? I don't think that it is unreasonable to say, hey, this woman clearly has political motivations, regardless of whether or not you think the allegations are true or not, right? Obviously, there are political motivations behind this, right? I think that we can all agree that the timing here definitely has to be a factor. And no, I don't have to believe all women. But again, regardless of whether or not you believe her, okay, the timing here is very suspicious. And I'm just saying that she had 30 years to say something about this, but she chose not to for whatever reason until 2 weeks before the 2024 election, in which the person that she is actively rooting for, Kamala Harris, is on the verge of losing. So I'm just saying, I mean, it could be a coincidence according to this woman, but I just have a hard time really believing that there are no political motivations behind this. And I think that it is a shame for CNN to air this type of story and to push this smear against Trump when Clearly, I think that a reasonable person can conclude that there are political motivations behind this, regardless of whether or not you believe the allegations. The timing here is just too suspect to push this as if it is 100% credible, knowing that likely there are political motivations behind it. But, hey, CNN, this is their version of journalism. This is what the mainstream liberal media sees as journalism nowadays. Let's push every allegation against Trump, regardless of whether or not there's actual credibility behind it. And let's basically ignore anything that doesn't fit the narrative that may make Trump look good or pushes back against the narrative that we want to put out there about Trump. And this is why Doug Emhoff's accusers will never, ever, ever, ever have the opportunity to tell their story and to sit down for a CNN interview and have their story be told to the world, because they can't be used as tools against Trump and Republicans, and it makes Democrats look bad, okay? It really tells you everything you need to know about the women that the liberal media and Democrats care about. Only the ones, again, that are useful tools against Trump and Republicans. All the rest of the women that are victims, okay, if you're not useful to the Democrat Party, they don't care, right? They do not care at all. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.